What's up, y'all? This is Thierry Tchenko. Welcome to the Texas Democrat with Thierry Tchenko podcast. I'm here with Glow. This is episode 9, and today we are going to be talking about cats and dogs, and more generally about immigrants, the stereotypes of immigrants, the way that caricatures of immigrants are being used for political purposes. And context is recently, J.D. Vance ended up coming out and saying that Haitian immigrants were eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, a state where he is currently the junior senator of. And it got highlighted because Donald Trump in the debate with Kamala Harris said they're eating cats and dogs to emphasize his policy on immigration. And so,
And I think the way he said it bothered me. It rubbed me the wrong way more than anything too. He's like, your pets, they're eating your pets, or they're eating, people's pets. And I'm like, who's jumping the fence and going out and snatching a cat and saying, I'm gonna have this for dinner?
yeah. And so let's do that. Let's start there. Tell me what your thoughts were about JD Vance saying that, Trump then amplifying it, and that whole situation, because it's turned into a whole big thing.
Yeah, I didn't hear JD Vance say it. The first time I ever heard the ticket talk about it was from the debate.
Okay.
And so Donald Trump, and then people are quick on the internet. They were putting clips and all that up on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. Haitians are being targeted the most for this particular reason,
Mm-hmm.
for the comment, and it just feeds like into the most negative, like, and I think you used the word like nasty part of politics. You're saying these people are eating cats and dogs, and yeah, it was so nasty. I think that was the best word to describe it, the one that you used, which is nasty.
Yeah, whenever you're creating caricatures of people, basically exploiting them for your own political gain, and
You make them sound like
animals.
You're making them sound like animals, like they're eating cats and dogs, like they're foxes and coyotes, and like just eating animals.
Mhm. And both of us you were born in Managua, Nicaragua,
That's right.
came to Miami whenever you were 3 years old. Me, I am the son of two immigrants from Cameroon, born and raised in Houston. So immigration's an issue for us that, not that we want to avoid, but even if we wanted to, we can't avoid. You know what I'm saying? And to see how, in this specific context, it's Haitians, but what Vance, Trump, and those cats, what they do is they paint those type of pictures of immigrants because they want to instill fear into people.
Yeah.
And it's something that I can't respect. For me, if you have a policy disagreement on immigration, cool. I don't have a problem with that. Let's talk it out. You think that there should be a quota because of this reason. You believe that certain people shouldn't be able to be here for this reason. I can have that conversation with you. But
Whether you agree with
whether I agree with you or not,
Yeah.
whether I agree with you or not, I can have that conversation with you. The point that I think what they're doing, where I think they're going too far, is to now, like you said, paint people as animals. Those are human beings. Those are human beings. And whether you think they should be here or not, that doesn't change the reality of them being human beings. And for Vance and Trump, you wanting to claim Christianity as your foundation, yet you're talking about people in a way that doesn't match how the Bible speaks about people.
Yeah.
And so that's my frustration with that. Let's have a policy discussion on immigration. No problem. But stop painting people in a way that is intentionally disgraceful and intentionally trying to stir up trouble so that you can try to win votes. It's just a nasty way of doing politics, and it's not my brand. It's not my brand at all. And to flip it, I try not to make fun of Republicans in those type of ways like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. You will never hear me call Greg Abbott Hot Wheels. You'll never hear me call Dan Patrick or Ted Cruz or make fun of Ted Cruz's wife. I don't do that. Let's talk about the person's character and let's talk about their policies. That's what matters. Now, getting into all that extra stuff, that's not what politics is supposed to be about. And I think that we need to try to move away from that, because at the end of the day, you are making it more difficult for people. And in this context, you're making it more difficult for immigrants to just take care of their basic responsibilities and just to live life. Now they're being targeted. Now they have to worry about, well, if I go over here, then I potentially have to worry about my life. I'm with my children. What is that? As a leader, that's not the way they're supposed to conduct yourself.
Yeah, I feel like it's very personal, and I know for you it's personal too. I know, like a story that I've told you. Got to the United States, we were in South Texas, like Brownsville area. That's what we crossed through, was Brownsville. My mom was walking down the street, and she had someone from a car throw their garbage at her. And this is what that type of rhetoric does to people, right? Like, it makes it okay to treat people subhuman. A woman just walking with her two girls. I don't remember it, but my mom remembers it because I was 3. So imagine just you walking down the street with your kid, someone throws the garbage at you. Because of what we look like, they're like, oh, these gotta be wetbacks, is what they used to call us back in the day. They gotta be these people, so I can treat them this way. And it's such a nasty, horrible thing to do. And that's what Donald Trump continues to do. This isn't the first time he does it, right? Before it was, they're rapists, they're drug dealers, they're this, that's who they're sending across the border. Like, does that stuff exist? Yes. Are there cartels in Mexico? Absolutely.
For sure.
But to paint a whole group of people in a certain way for your benefit to elicit fear from people, I just think that is whack.
And we're talking about, so there's 2 separate things. There is painting a group of people a certain way and putting out caricatures of them because you know that it's going to rile your base up.
Yeah.
Versus the realities on the ground. Are there illegal immigrants that are committing crimes in the United States? Yes. Should they be punished accordingly? Yes. We both agree with that. Now it's going out and now making these broad statements. Mexicans are rapists. Haitians are eating cats and dogs. Those statements do not represent those groups of people.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece that I think sometimes people end up conflating, is because of one reality, they think that it's okay to then now paint these horrible pictures about people. And what I would say is that we should never do that. We should never do that. Just because somebody in your family does something evil or does something wrong, doesn't mean that it's okay for me to now paint the whole family and say, y'all are evil because your brother or your sister or your uncle committed an evil act. And I think there's a faith piece to it that frustrates me as well, because of how much the Republican Party tries to hold on to Christianity. And one of the most important elements of Christianity, in my view, is the concept of all of us being created in the image of God, which means that all of us have inherent value, have inherent dignity, something that can't be taken away or given to us. We have that inherently. And if that's the case, then Donald Trump is no different than the Haitian immigrant. When we talk about Donald Trump, oftentimes, we talk about what he says, and we talk about things that aren't necessarily focused on policy. When you hear a lot of the critiques about Trump, it's his character, it's the things that he says. And there are times where I think some of those things can be overemphasized. But in this case, I think it's important for us to talk about how much your words matter.
Yeah.
Words matter, especially as a leader. Your words matter. What you say matters. It can either encourage people to do certain things, or it can discourage them from doing certain things. And when Trump has that type of rhetoric, you see the effects of it on the ground. And so, and he's come out, and we're shooting this episode after the second assassination attempt of Donald Trump at his golf course in Florida. And he's been going around lately saying that the rhetoric of the left, by calling him a threat to democracy, is what is a reason why people are coming after him. You can't pick and choose when words matter. So it can't matter whenever people that are against you are using terms that you don't like. But then whenever you think it's politically beneficial, then you're like, oh, well, what I'm saying isn't really mattering. It's just people are doing what they're going to do. It has nothing to do with me. Can't have your cake and eat it too, man.
Yeah, the reason I don't want to go down the biblical component here is I think we're past the stage of believing that Donald Trump is a true Christian. And I know that we gotta keep doing it, and we can keep doing it. I just think that I feel like everything we do is like, not everything. I feel like a lot of the stuff that we say, it's always that one point, right? Like, Donald Trump is not a Christian, and these are the reasons why. We can always point to something that he does or says that you're like, this guy's not a real Christian.
Well, I'm not even going to go out and say whether he's a real Christian or not. I'm going to use what you're telling me. So if you're telling me that you're something, then I'm not going to use that as a measurement
for how you judge that.
Or for how I view you.
Yeah.
And I like the lens that I view you through is what you're telling me you are.
Got you.
But let's take it out of Donald Trump. Let's take it to JD Vance and
No, I'm just saying, sorry. I'm just saying, like, it seems, and that's what I'm saying, like, we can still keep doing it because it's still relevant, but it just seems like for most of these people, when we talk about them, we're like, where are you showing your authentic Christianity? Where are the fruit of the spirits in you? Like, how does someone look at your life and say, you know what, that guy's living a very, like, sanctified life, or that guy's living right.
A life that reflects Christianity and the principles that we see in the Bible.
Like, we can't see it. But I think it's still relevant to discuss. I myself get discouraged because I'm like, it's not there and it's obvious, but maybe someone who's going to listen to this might not see it, and something that we say could be like, you know what, that does make sense. Like, where are the fruit of the spirits reflected in these people?
Yeah, it's
so it's more of a personal thing. I get discouraged sometimes.
And I think about that comment from Vance and just the general way that they talk about immigrants in my context, in our context here in Houston. The diversity of Houston. Houston is the most diverse city in the country, if not number one, number two. And I'm thinking about the way that people are processing the type of things that Trump, Vance, and company, when they say certain things, how people are internalizing that. And it's just very disrespectful to have that approach and to talk about people that way. And that's in general. That's not just specifically to immigrants. That's in general. Talking about people in a way where no human should be talked about the way that Donald Trump talks about certain groups of people. And I have that same critique of people in the Democratic Party that talk about rural folks as if they're second-class citizens. I apply this across the board.
Yeah.
Because that also happens too. And we have to have those conversations. Well, why is it that it seems like we talk about people in urban areas in a better way than we talk about people in rural areas? And so I try to be at least consistent with this approach of viewing people with equal value and equal dignity and equal worth. In your opinion, what do you think the effects of this type of rhetoric will have long term?
It really depends on Donald Trump. I believe it depends on Donald Trump winning or not winning. I think during his presidency, you could see a lot of hate crimes be on the rise.
Across all populations.
Yeah, across populations. So
the AAPI community, Latinos, Black community.
I mean, it's Donald Trump's personality, right? COVID, the China virus. We were living in DC, and you had people that were attacking Chinatown. You had people that were sucker punching people, going into nail salons. Like, it was horrible. And so those, again, words matter. And so it really depends, I think, if he wins or not. I think if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz pull it off, I think we can temper that, but I think it really depends.
Have you, in your experience over the last, Trump has been in office, well, Trump was in office in 2016 to 2020. So 2016, 2024, 8 years. My math is, I got to make sure the math still. In the last 8 years, are there any specific stories that you've heard from immigrants that highlight the effects of this type of language? And that could be personally in your family, but that could also just be as you talk to people in your community.
Yeah, most of my stories are always going to center around my mom. When Donald Trump was president, my mom was at a post office in Miami, and she was speaking Spanish, right? My mom speaks Spanish in Miami, and I think she was either on the phone or she was talking to, she was a Matani, because Tani would have probably fought the lady. But my mom was by herself, so she must have been on the phone. And some lady told my mom to stop talking in Spanish, that she was in America. And I think Miami's kind of like a bubble sometimes from the rest of the world, where you go to Miami and everything's mostly in Spanish and you're just kind of like in this immersion type of experience. And my mom wasn't talking to the lady. The lady wasn't the worker of the post office. She was just a customer, just like my mom. And my mom was standing there, and the lady told my mom, stop talking in Spanish. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Like, you scare people into not, and I don't even know if you scare, but you give people license to be disrespectful of other people. What do you care, ma'am, that I'm speaking in Spanish? And so that's one of the stories that I have from when Trump was president, where we could see that kind of influence come out.
And it relates to Houston too. I mean, I think about the panaderias, in Southwest that I would go to, all Spanish. Or the Parisian bakeries in Southwest, all Vietnamese.
Which is the trip.
Right? I'm walking in and I want my chocolate croissant or I want my barbecue pork sandwich. And I got
people that don't know, like, that is a real thing. Like,
yeah.
There's a Parisian bakery, and you walk in and it's chocolate croissants, or you can get like Vietnamese sandwiches.
I would plug them, but I want to be careful of how I'm. But yeah, I'm walking in. I walk in. I want my croissant, my sandwiches, and it's all Vietnamese. And I have to figure out a way of being able to operate in there. But that's the beauty of the United States, that someone that may not be able to speak English fluently, / someone that may not want to speak English in their establishment, can still have a thriving business and feel comfortable in that, speaking Vietnamese, speaking Spanish, speaking French. That's the beauty of the United States. And so to insult that, to make that seem like a bad thing, I can't go with it. And my issue with that too is we're even selective in that. So I'm sure Donald Trump doesn't have a problem with Spanish-speaking establishments that are going to vote for him.
No, didn't he take a picture with Goya when the whole thing with Goya was going on a couple years ago? A few years ago.
I think
he put a can like this of Goya. Yeah. He doesn't have a problem.
He doesn't have a problem. So the polls are saying that Latinos are going to vote for Donald Trump at a higher rate than in 2016 and 2020. He doesn't have a problem with that. And a lot of them may be Spanish, like primarily Spanish speakers. He's not saying, oh, well, because y'all don't speak English, y'all go ahead and vote for Kamala. Like, oh, I don't want y'all in my camp. No. So to be selective in when you want a certain group of people to do certain things is based off of if they're going to vote for you or not. That's just not the way that we should be treating people.
I think that there's something that people get confused with all the time. And I think it's the fact that we stick up for and are against that type of behavior, Donald Trump's behavior, they equate us being just like 1,000% open immigration. Like, because you're sticking up for a group of people, then now it's like, oh yeah, anything goes. Look at you sticking up for them, whatever. No, right is right and wrong is wrong. And it ties back to what you said at the beginning, where no, we want to see people held accountable that should be held accountable. I doubt that there's an immigrant in this country. I'm sure if you called your mom and your dad, we've already talked to my mom about this one issue. I doubt that there's an immigrant in this state, in this country, that will tell you, if another immigrant commits a crime, do you think they should go unpunished? The answer is going to be, I can 100% no. People should be held accountable for what they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've even gotten some flack for, or me personally, for saying that I don't believe that a governmental entity in the United States should be focusing resources on those that are illegal immigrants in the United States whenever there are American residents and American citizens that are still dealing with issues. We got some of the comments that I've got, like, whoa, Thierry, how are you saying that? I'm like, no, I just think that United States citizens and United States residents should be the beneficiaries of United States resources.
I think I'm going to push back a little bit.
Talk to me.
I think the way you're saying it closes the door on help to migrants.
Okay.
And so the way you say it is like, no, American resources should go here. But I believe that, and maybe you said it in, like, I said, tease it out.
Yeah.
Tease it out. Prioritizing. And I'll give you an example. I was in New York for a friend of mine's baby shower.
Uh-huh.
And one of my other friends was there, and we were talking about the resources New York is giving, right? And the calls that she's having to deal with because of the resources that New York is giving. People feel like, okay, these Greg Abbott buses people to New York gets the bus of people, and they start processing them.
Uh-huh.
So they start processing their food stamps, they start processing all that stuff. People that are already waiting for their applications to be processed are like, wow, I'm still waiting for my stuff to be processed, but y'all are processing them before me.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's where if it's bad blood, use another word, whatever you want to call it, like descriptor, I think that's where that's coming from.
The bitterness.
That's where it's coming from, because they feel like, I've been waiting in line for this stuff to go through, but these people got here yesterday and they're already getting processed.
And I can understand why someone would feel bitter.
Yeah. And so
here in Houston, you have hundreds of thousands of people that may want to buy a home that can't buy a home, or it's very difficult for them to buy a home. That governmental entity has a home buying program, and there are people that are of legal status in the United States that apply for that program. There are people that may not be of legal status in the United States that apply for that program. And people of legal status are being left out of that program for someone that is not of legal status. So in those situations, because that's where my brain is going whenever I'm really thinking about this, is resources like that, in my opinion, should be prioritized on people of legal status to be able to get those resources. Now, there's a second conversation of certain people that are not of legal status. Why are they not of legal status? And does that highlight a flaw in our immigration system? Because two things can be true. Someone that is of good standing in the United States, is working, is not of legal status, and because of the flaws in our immigration system, they're not of legal status. And in a correction of those flaws, that's someone that could then be given legal status to work, legal status to get in line on a pathway to citizenship, and then now their situation looks different whenever now they're applying for a certain resource. Does that clear up things a little bit more?
I think it does. I think it does. So it's not a wholesale thing. It's more on like a case by case or like program by program. Because if the program is designed for people that don't have papers, then that's what the program is designed for. Or and that again, I just want more clarity on that.
It's a hard sell for me now. We would have to go case by case. It's a hard sell for me to believe. It's a hard sell for me to. It's a hard sell for me to agree to a program coming from a governmental entity in the United States that is prioritizing people that aren't of legal status when it comes to things like home ownership or economic development, small businesses, those areas. It's hard for me to see a situation where I'm going to be in complete agreement and just say, yes, this is the best thing that we should do with governmental dollars in the United States. And I try to be consistent. I have that same expectation of foreign countries. So if a United States citizen goes to another country, I don't believe that that country should be dedicating and prioritizing resources to them. It should be focused on their people, knowing that there are people in that foreign country that are struggling, that could benefit from the resources that they're providing, but instead it's being given to someone that isn't a citizen or that isn't a resident of that country.
Yeah, I don't, we may need a whole nother episode just on this, because I think that you opened up a whole nother can of worms that this 30-minute episode just won't do justice to.
Potentially.
Yeah. That's where I leave that.
We'll put that to the side. Yeah. Now let's go back to rhetoric, Haitian immigrants in general, caricatures. Where do you end at?
Yeah, I think it's bullshit. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to paint people like that. I think it's ridiculous. That's wholesale.
Okay.
Yeah. Does J.D. Vance say that about his mother-in-law? Does J.D. Vance view his mother-in-law in that way?
He made a statement that I want to add on to before we close off. He said, if I have to make up stories about the situations going on in America, then it's okay. Like
for the media to cover it and us get like some pub, like if I have to make up stories, cool, I'm gonna do that.
Which is a horrible, absolutely horrible way of looking at politics.
What are you supposed to believe?
What type of leader are you?
You're a liar. You're a liar.
You're a liar.
You're a liar. What kind of lead? Like you said, what kind of leader are you? When am I ever supposed to believe anything you say? Your people. When are they supposed to believe you? It's a whole mess.
I just want to tell y'all right now, that is one of the worst statements I've ever heard from an elected official in the United States of America. I'm willing to make a lie up and say whatever I want to say just so the media can cover it, and I'm okay with that. That opens the door to anything and everything. I could lie about you. I could set up situations that aren't true just so the media can cover it, so that I get to my goal of winning an election.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do whatever, say whatever, to get attention for the ultimate purpose of getting a position.
Getting elected to vice president.
That's not my brand. I'm saying that. I hope that y'all hold me to that if I'm ever in a position of elected office. Shoot, hold me to that even if I'm not in a position of elected office. No, hold me in general. In general, that's just it's a yeah.
Yeah, I was like, you're not a dishonest person walking around?
Yeah. No. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. If somebody would have told me, Thierry, you could win the primary, you could win the general election against Cruz, if you make up a whole bunch of random stories about random people that aren't true, I'll say, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. And maybe that goes against the way that politicians are trained to think and they're trained to operate. But I believe that there are certain values and certain principles that people of elected office, and I hope for this in general of people, but especially people that are in elected office, especially people that are in leadership positions, that are examples. There are certain values that I think are important to hold. And when you don't hold those values, you can see a domino effect in society. Because if I am looking at my president, if I'm looking at my vice president, and they say, I'm willing to say whatever I need to say in order to get to my ultimate goal, then imagine now how somebody's going to take that and use that in their own community.
The temptation of lying is not just a Republican thing.
Mm-hmm.
That goes
across the board.
And I think that when we let people get away with certain things, you're just incentivizing more bad behavior and people lying to you just to get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I was going to say.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we're at in our politics right now.
Yeah.
What you just said, we've incentivized a lot of bad behavior. And because we've incentivized that bad behavior, people feel like they need to do whatever they can do in order to be successful. Because politics, and I'm telling y'all this as someone that was a candidate not too long ago, that candidates are people that will do things based off of the audience that they're trying to serve. That's how most candidates are. So if they know that people are going to vote for them, if they're transparent and honest, then they'll be transparent and honest. If they feel like, well, they want someone that is going to be able to just tell lies, they'll do it. And so that's, yeah, man. So your message is don't talk about people.
You can talk
don't talk about people in a negative way. Don't tell lies about them. Don't paint them to be animals.
Say don't talk about people in a negative way. Because there's some stuff like negative things that people do. But I think when you characterize people and make them look like subhuman, like animals, I think that's when because I can have an honest critique of someone, and that's a negative way of looking at somebody.
Yeah.
What are your closing statements?
No, don't tell lies about people. Don't paint people to be animals. It's a very low bar. I'm not asking for someone to be a rocket scientist. I'm not asking for someone to dunk a basketball. Just don't tell lies about people. As a politician, focus on policy, focus on character of the people that you're running against. Like, it's not rocket science, man. It's not rocket science. So that is episode number 9 of the Texas Democrat with Thierry Tchenko. Glow, thank you. Y'all have a good rest of the day. Good rest of the night, depending on when you're watching this. But appreciate y'all for listening.
Bye, y'all.